Throughout the Chesapeake semester, we were confronted with many issues such as population growth, climate change, land erosion, pollution, and sedimentation. We also delved into the topic of island communities, which sparked our interest and became the basis of our research. But in order to begin, we must discover what an island community is.
What is an island? I'd have to say an island is a landmass that's surrounded by a body of water that you would need non-land transportation devices to move goods to and from that area.
Something that's isolated. It could be a landmass that forms in a body of water, it gets separated from a larger landmass. If we're talking about people or society, it could be a group that's isolated from another group.
People tend to think of islands as things that are surrounded by water, but all they need to be, really, biologically, is isolated from other places.
My definition of an island would be any community that either chooses to separate itself from surrounding communities or is isolated by physical barriers.
You have physical islands, but then you have communities that are islands as well because they've been sort of cut off, whether by their physical location or, their distance from other communities.
Deal Island, like many islands in the Chesapeake Bay, is connected to the mainland by a land bridge. This allows for easier and quicker access to and from the mainland. This island supports an incredibly unique community, which is centered around the Waterman culture. In order to fully understand the culture and resources of the area of an isolated community, we asked several citizens throughout the island their opinions.
Everybody's friendly and nice. We're pretty close-knit.
We don't have a grocery store, or, not the nearest fun stuff is 45 minutes away, but it's a good isolated to us. If I had to take a boat to get to and from everywhere I needed to go, I would definitely move away. That would be too rough for me.
Culture can be defined as the characteristics of an individual community, such as the Waterman culture of Deal Island. Here they focus on harvesting oysters, as this is the most productive fishery around the island.
I've been here my whole life, just about. I just didn't care for being over on the western shore. It was too fast a life, it was just rush everything you did.
I just work on boats. So that's what I like to do. There's nothing to do here if you don't work on the water.
Some don't want to work on the water, and then there's not really a lot of job opportunities close by, so that's one of the main reasons people do move away. They want to work somewhere like up in the city where they pay more jobs.
I hear where watermen are coming from when they say they feel like they're a dying breed.
It's about 50-50 now. People that work in town or away on the road or whatever. So the other 50 would have to find something else to do also, I guess. As it is right now, it's going great, but that can all change overnight because it's all up to nature to supply us with the oysters.
The younger population is leaving because you can't get any jobs, which I did. I left and went to work, and I had a good job, but I just didn't care for it that much. But most of the younger people have to leave to get a good job. It's the biggest problem we got. But when I was young, almost everybody worked on the water. Now it's only probably about 10% work on the water that's living here. They try to get a good education.
It's a dying life. Just the way it is all over the region.
Watermen of this area struggle to survive with the low number of bushels they are permitted to harvest per day and the low price per bushel. With all of these regulations, along with high license fees, the next generation may not be able to continue with this career.
When I oystered, the oyster license were $50. Now they're like $1,000 or something.
I don't think it'd be any such thing as a waterman in another 20 years, if you want to be truthful with you. I think it'd be an endangered species. They're already endangered species, but I think in another 20 years there won't be any watermen. It's not because there won't be oysters and crabs, it's just because you can't afford to do it. Because everything you do costs so much and the product don't go up hardly any at all.
I think the most challenging thing about working as a waterman, working in the wild fishery, is the fact that you are really at the whims of Mother Nature. and you're at the whims of the people in the watershed who are impacting the water quality. That's a hard way to make a living. It's a hard way to make a living knowing that you've got really no control over the fact that if you have a really, really intense storm system in the spring, it might wash all the baby crabs, the zoea, out of the Chesapeake Bay. And so are you going to even have any crabs to catch that season? With oystering, I mean, you might have another strong storm system and it upsets the salinity of the bay and you've got a major oyster moratorium. You know, it's no longer, I think, a reliable way to make a good living. I would encourage someone to go to college and get a job in something they know is steady. And working in the Chesapeake Bay is anything but that now.
We took these issues we had researched within the Chesapeake with us as we traveled to Peru. Parque De La Papa, an area located in the highlands of the Andes, is disconnected by dirt roads, poor infrastructure, dispersed school and healthcare systems. Similar to the island communities of the Chesapeake, Parque De La Papa's remoteness has resulted in sustaining an area steeped in local traditions. At the same time, the area of Parque De La Papa faces many of the same challenges we witnessed in island communities of the Chesapeake. They are facing a lack of job diversity, little entertainment for youth, and a lack of economic mobility, resulting in a high level of emigration, particularly youth, for employment and education opportunities.
So, to sum up some of the problems facing Quechua communities, one of those is threats to their crops, threats to their livelihood through climate change. So whether it is increased temperatures and different zones now in which crops have to be grown, whether it is shortages of water, their basic livelihood is at risk. Second is the lure of the outside world. It's a very, very powerful and seductive thing.
Despite the challenges the area faces, Parque De La Papa is actually a close-knit organization of 5 communities bonded by the traditions and local knowledge surrounding the indigenous potato. By preserving the species, the people of Potato Park hope to preserve their culture and traditions.
They're tied to this landscape in fundamental ways. It has a history, and they appreciate it in a way that we probably don't.
Because of their conscious connection to the land, they have successfully cultivated over 3,000 types of potatoes that have woven their way into the center of their culture. This is completed by supplying genetic data to the international gene banks and agricultural innovation for the purpose of research and preservation. These people have come together because they understand there is strength in numbers. By creating a bond between these areas, the culture is maintained. Parque De La Papa has evolved from a remote Andean highland community since its establishment in 1998 to now host hundreds of tourists each year. These visitors pay to enter and experience Potato Park's authentic culture and rich Quechua traditions. Members of the bioreserve also generate income from sales of beautiful textiles, indigenous medicinal creams, and native herbs. This now supplements their economic gains, as well as being an exceptional method of adapting to challenges this culture has faced.
Especially or fundamentally, I think the big question is, can you make a living? If you can make a living, that all is good. If your traditions are based on a very specific lifestyle, if they're based on a very specific set of resources, and those resources are threatened in any way, then it becomes a major question as to whether you're going to be able to maintain it or not.
Small island communities in the Chesapeake, such as Deal Island, can utilize these methods and implement them in their own communities. Deal Island has a golden opportunity before it, the possibility to create its own supplemental income by embracing the installment of ecotourism and educational services. The skipjack is a cultural icon of the Chesapeake Bay, designed specifically for this shallow waterway. There has been a push recently for the educational services to birth shipwright apprentices by a nonprofit organization, the Coastal Heritage Alliance. Mike Vlahovic, founder and director of CHA, has fashioned a beautiful mission to preserve these ships and ultimately the Waterman culture. CHA's primary focus will be to assist fishing families in passing on their heritage to new generations within their own communities and to the broader public audience.
I want to see this boat go out and work again because I want to see the culture continue. So, in a way, I don't care that much about the boat. It's really what the boat can do. The boat for me is a tool. There's not too many people that have dedicated themselves to maintain that tool, and that's really what drives me now.
By exploring the waterways, tourists will have a better appreciation for the small island environment that these watermen interact with daily. In addition, by exposing them to the oysters in person, visitors may be able to establish an emotional attachment and will therefore be more likely to dedicate time and money to saving this keystone species. This approach has been taken on by some retired watermen in the Chesapeake Islands and is proving to be a relatively stable income. In addition to educating the community about oysters, education about the vessels utilized in the retrieval of this food source is equally, if not more, beneficial.
It's beneficial in certain ways that island communities have maintained their distinct cultures, but you have to wonder for how long that's going to be able to be maintained. I think eventually the islands that we know to be permanent will also wash away. What I wonder will remain is that culture, or will the culture also be gone? Because again, these islands are bastions of this isolated traditional culture, and that I think would be the greatest loss. Greater than the islands themselves would be the loss of the traditional communities that are on them, and this sort of way of working with the environment and this understanding of the environment that can't be replicated.
As we have uncovered, an island community is measured by its isolation and its natural resource dependency. But the size of these small islands cannot mask the greatness of the unique cultures harbored in these environments. But cultures do change. If the change is thrust upon them, that is truly the damage to their livelihood. It is an immeasurable loss to have these cultures wash away with the tides of time. As Dr. Seidel so eloquently stated,
it would be a tragic loss. I think for humanity, in a way, it's a loss when a culture is extinguished, when a language disappears, because it embodies so much intimate knowledge that's been built up over hundreds of generations, knowledge of plants, knowledge of soils, knowledge of landscapes. And I think that if they lost their traditional lifestyle, that would inevitably go away.
Preservation can only occur from within. These watermen and native Andeans must desire to prolong the existence of their lifestyles. And we believe that in order to do so successfully, these small island communities must look to each other for help. Observe their history. See what they have done in the past to keep traditions alive, and mimic that in their own habitat. Observe their present actions, and how they adapt to change. Finally, observe their hope for the future, and admire their determination to encapsulate the essence of their most treasured aspect of these isolated island communities.